Hey guys, it's Kenny here. Today, I want to share a bit about my upbringing, what it was like growing up in the UK in a Korean family. It's something I get asked about quite often, so I thought, why not make a video about it? If you've grown up between two cultures, some of this might sound familiar. So, I was born in South Korea in a city called Ulsan, which is known for shipbuilding and car factories. But I left when I was really young, so I don't remember much of it. At the time, my dad worked as an engineer for Samsung, and Samsung sometimes sends their workers abroad. So, he got assigned to the UK, and just like that, my mum, dad, my two older sisters, and I moved. And I was around 3 years old. Apparently, I'd only spent about a month in nursery in Korea before we moved. We ended up in the northeast of England, and that's where I grew up. My parents told me that when I first started nursery in the UK, I went completely silent. Which makes sense. Imagine being 3 years old and suddenly everyone is speaking a language you don't understand. But at that age, I didn't realize I was different. I didn't know about race or culture or identity. I was just a kid. In my mind, I was the same as everyone else. I didn't notice that I looked different until much later, when I started experiencing racism and noticing differences at home versus outside. In those early months, I was just confused about the language. Apparently, I didn't speak for a few months. I just listened. But kids pick things up quickly, so after a while, I started speaking English naturally and became fluent. My life was actually quite multicultural without me realizing it. At school, everything was British. I spoke English, had English friends, English teachers, just like any other kid. But then I would come home and it would be completely Korean. We spoke Korean at home. My mum would usually call me downstairs for dinner, usually Korean food, and we'd eat together as a family. With my parents, I spoke Korean, but with my sisters, honestly, we kind of mixed it up. Sometimes English felt easier, sometimes Korean. We just switched naturally. Over time, though, my English got better and better, and my Korean started to fade. My parents noticed, and they were worried that I might forget my Korean entirely. So, they signed me up for Korean school every Saturday, no days off. While kids were watching cartoons or sleeping in, I was back in class. But honestly, I loved it. It was full of kids just like me, Korean, but raised in the UK. Some were better at Korean, some worse, but we were all kind of in the same boat. We learned to read and write Hangul, which is the Korean alphabet, and they even taught maths. But my strongest memories aren't the lessons, it's the break times. Running around the classrooms, playing tag, playing Game Boys, just having fun. But my first day was rough. I remember walking into class with my mum, and all the kids were in the middle of a spelling test in Korean. I couldn't read anything. I felt so out of place. I even tried to peek at the answers from the girl sitting across from me, and she immediately covered her paper with her hand. And right at that moment, I just felt like I didn't belong anywhere. Like I wasn't Korean enough to be Korean. I was 5 years old, and I just burst into tears. My mum took me out of the classroom and gave me a piggyback ride around the school to calm me down. Looking back, it's kind of a funny memory, but at the time, it felt huge. After that though, something clicked. I learned Hangul in about a month. Turns out, the writing system is actually pretty simple once you understand it. And once I could read and write, everything became easier. I made friends, I had fun, and Korean school became something I look forward to every Saturday. Another thing about growing up in a household where your parents don't speak English fluently is that you end up being the translator, especially at school. Parents' Day was always the moment I used to dread. My mum cared so much about my education. She had so many questions for my teachers, but she needed me to translate everything. So, I'd sit there awkwardly, switching between English and Korean, explaining what the teacher was saying and what my mum was asking. And for some reason, I used to feel embarrassed by that. I think I didn't like standing out. I didn't want to speak Korean in front of my teacher. Looking back now, I shouldn't have been embarrassed. I was actually helping my family, and there's nothing wrong with that. But at the time, it just made me feel different. And on top of that, I wasn't exactly the smartest kid in school. I struggled with some subjects. I got in trouble for silly things. I was a bit naughty, honestly. So those parents' days were always stressful. A little bit of fear, a little bit of embarrassment, and a lot of translating. As I got older, I started noticing more differences, mainly through other people. The racism I experienced at first was honestly pretty casual. You know, kids being kids, saying things without really understanding them. I get called Chinese just because I looked Asian, or I'd hear comments about my eyes being small, stuff like that. And to be fair, growing up in the British environment, there's a lot of banter. Everyone makes fun of everyone for something. So within my close friends, it kind of became just part of the joking around. Like, that was a thing they joked about with me, being Asian. And I didn't really mind it because I knew they actually liked me. It was just part of the humour. But every now and then, when it came from someone I wasn't close with, and the tone was different, like there was a bit of spite or intention behind it, that's when it hit a little differently. It didn't happen a lot, and nothing extreme ever happened to me, but you can feel the difference, you know? There's a joking comment, and then there's a comment where you can tell they actually mean it. But even then, I usually just brushed it off. I never let it define me. What affected me more was when my parents experienced racism. Their English wasn't very strong at the time, and I could see they couldn't always respond or defend themselves. That's when I felt more protective. It made me more aware of my identity, being Korean, being British, and living somewhere between the two. So yeah, that was my upbringing. Korean at home, British outside. Translating for my parents, learning two languages, trying to fit into two cultures at once, and figuring out who I was along the way. Growing up between cultures can be confusing sometimes, but it also gives you a wider perspective. It teaches you to understand people, to adapt, to listen, and honestly, I'm grateful for it. So if you're someone who feels in between, just know that there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to choose one side. Both are part of who you are. Please make sure to drop a message here on Telegram if you want to receive English lessons. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this or want more videos like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. And I'll see you in the next one.